not, though. It has
Well,
to be
again,
said.
yeah. And this is leading us into the discussion of the solution. Because the ones who do go to confession love the traditional Mass in general. Now, of course, there are exceptions. I'm somewhat painting with a broad brush. But certainly, without a doubt, those who love the traditional Mass go to confession. In general, they will love that sacrament as well. And they'll appreciate the fact that we are sinners and our Lord gives us His mercy. And that we don't forgive ourselves. It's God who forgives us.
Okay, good. Getting back to something we were talking about, well, how about this? Getting away from that per se for a moment. And back to the world and how Catholics interact in it. So I don't want to be jumping here and there, but just it crossed my mind again. We just had off-year elections a couple of weeks ago, right? The first Tuesday in November, right? Okay. We live here in Massachusetts, right? A state that has been has had a majority of Catholics for a long time, right? The states that are primarily Catholic tend to be the most extreme, left-wing, liberal, and that means antithetical to the teachings of the Church.
Right.
Okay. This is something I've pondered over my entire life. Catholics vote against their church all the time, right? Against the teachings of the church all the time. Right. They can be dependent upon every single election cycle, right? And there's of course, Reagan Democrats and things like that, but let's face it, a place like Massachusetts is a Democrat stronghold, and then you got California, you have a few others, New York, New Jersey, places with a lot of Catholics, and it's always the same. What's wrong there? I mean, Jews don't vote against Jews, the Muslims don't vote against Muslim interests, no one does, except...
Well, this goes back to something we began the show with, taking the high road with Dr. O'Brien. This is how we began the show, by saying there's this de facto schism, or schism. And what is the true proportion of Catholics who believe the doctrines of the Church? Well, it's 10% of 10%. So that's not going to win you any elections. So if we face the truth, if we're interested in facing the truth, we will acknowledge that we're a very small minority. And even those people we see at Mass are voting Democrat.
Yeah.
They're voting against the Church.
Well, once again, we've seen the behavior, no sense naming names, but behavior of bishops. And again, it's not anything new. This was even prior to Vatican II. We would see bishops acting basically as toadies of Democrat politicians. So let's face it. That's what we're talking about. This being enthralled and captured by the Democrats since the 1820s is just, what is it?
Well, as you know, in being a historian, you know the story of Ireland and how the British attempted to snuff out the faith to these starving Catholics. They would say, well, if you just change your religion to the state religion, we'll give you some soup.
Souperism.
Yeah, so some would take the soup and deny our Lord.
Poison soup.
Well, that's precisely what's happening. Our fellow Catholics and priests and bishops have taken the soup. And they're spouting just the Democrat line. Now, in this state, Republicans aren't any better than Democrats.
Well, that's true, too.
I mean,
there's no one to vote for.
Right.
That's true, too. So there's no alternative.
Only when an evangelical Protestant is running
Right.
That's pretty much the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
That's the only hope that we
Like
have
Catholics.
for anybody running for office.
Well, we had a Mormon governor who again, he was, I don't know what the level of Mormonism he is anyway, but I mean, he was seen as this sort of conservative, but these Irish Catholics or whomever, in upper levels of politics, they are dreadful. Every
Oh,
single
sure.
time.
And then
Absolutely.
this Mormon governor you're speaking of is the one who brought us same-sex marriage.
Yes, I mean, no, that's what I'm saying. He was no better, but he portrayed himself as a conservative amongst,
At least
extreme
until
leftists.
during the primary.
So that's how it always is. But the point is, there's never a Catholic that runs with any Catholicism. There's never
It's
is.
very rare. We did have someone in the primary for governor, not governor, but for it was for governor, who was a devout Catholic, but he got virtually no votes.
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, you remember when Pat Buchanan ran for president a couple of times, he had absolutely no Catholic support. He was Catholic, and just rewind to 1960, and it was a big deal just that a Catholic was running, a very, debatable Catholic at that. And then go back to 1928 when Al Smith, the first Catholic, Al Smith ran. And it was, they were in the streets with torches about the papists, getting rid of the papists, that sort of thing. And the thing in 1960 was supposed to be a great triumph. And as we know, that was actually a disaster.
Yeah. So we have to disabuse ourselves of the notion that we're some political force to be reckoned with.
It's absurd.
Because the church has always been countercultural. The church has always been this real minority, this salt, this light. And our hope is not in princes. It's
And potentates.
yes, it's in the Lord. And so we can expect to lose every vote. But on the other hand, we have the greatest of rewards awaiting us. So don't despair.
Once again, though, we say that should we just see? This was gets me about so many Catholics too in the Vatican II era or what have you. It's like offer it up, put a smile on your face, take it easy. So should we just say, well, we'll sit in the corner waiting for martyrdom, right? There's no one to vote for. What is the proper way? You're right. And the political system is a mess. It stinks, right? It stinks it did from the get-go.
Right. In fact, our Lord, he was tried by this allegedly ethical, fair Roman legal system and by this allegedly holy Jewish moral code. And both of them conspired to put God to death. So you're right. From the very beginning, the world has been against Christ and his church. But that doesn't mean we should be lazy and just sit around waiting for martyrdom. That's never been the attitude of real Catholics. We're to preach the gospel, to spread the truth, and yes, there's going to be plenty of crosses to carry. But we do so, and in the end, we know who wins.
Okay.